Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take It from the Iron Woman. After more than 250 episodes, we are speaking to Holly again, a fellow coach from the Columbia coaching program with a lot of knowledge. One thing of many things we have in common is the skiing and probably also the passion about performance coaching. Where do you see the opportunities where we can help leaders? And I know you told me before we recorded that you were an alpine snowboard and ski instructor. What can we learn from sports? I mean, that's my theme. Take it from the Iron Woman, global business coaching with sports parallels. We all know it's about determination, the energy. I always loved skiing, and I wish I could have done more like flips and stuff like that. That would have been ballet. Ski ballet was my thing, but nobody invited me for any team. And then I wanted to do or try out the snowboard, and somebody said, "You're too old." And I was like,
"No way."
Okay, coach me a little bit.
I'll get on the mountain with you anytime. No one's ever too old to snowboard. But in regard to like any kind of crossover between sports coaching and leadership coaching, like one of the things that I tend to use as an analogy often is that most of the time athletes are spending their time not in competitions and racing, but rather practicing. And that's how they improve their skills. They practice over and over, and they run drills over and over again. They get down to the bottom of the course. And whenever an athlete ever got down to the bottom, the only question I would ask them when they got there, well, how did that feel? What was that like? What worked? Where could you have done better? And then they'd answer those questions. Okay, what are you going to do differently next time? And we just keep running those drills through. And that's so similar to leadership coaching because people are kind of looking that they have to automatically be good in this skill. All of a sudden, we're going to have this conversation. Everything is going to be different the next day. Well, that's not the case. You have to look for that practice field. You have to set up your course so you can run drills. Where is that space where you can practice? Who are those people? Is it with your team? Is it with your peers or perhaps with the leadership team? Like, who's that? Who and where is that with? And when is that? Because you're not always going to be able to do it. But when is that race? Like, when is your race coming? When do you have to be prepared? What is that timeline that you need to really have this skill honed? And that's one of the best kind of parallels that I can see between the two. And I've worked with a few leaders where it's really helped them just give themselves more grace, that they don't have to perform. You're going to screw up. And so find that space. You're not trying unless you screw up. It's going off sides in hockey. You got to push yourself and just finding that space or creating that space you're able to practice.
You mentioned the right word. It's about practicing. I remember, obviously, growing up in Switzerland, we would go skiing for after-school programs. How many times did we fall? We fall, we get up. We fall, we get up. We fall, we get up. But it was, if I remember those days, it was always fun. It was fun. I think as a leader, maybe we have expectations that are too high. And as you said, we think we need on the first day, we need to have everything ready. Meanwhile, it's a journey.
Change is a process, not an event. I still instruct snowboarding, teach it, not as a coach, but as a teacher, snowboarding and skiing. And when I was like really heavily instructing snowboarding, I did a lot of beginner classes. And the first thing that I would teach my students is how to fall. The first thing, because everyone, especially with snowboarding, because you're stuck on one stick instead of two, you're going to fall. And I said, we do like a couple drills just so they get used to the board. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to fall. Get that through your heads now. I'm going to teach you how to fall. You don't get hurt when you fall, and you can get it back up faster. And once people got that through their head and they accepted the fact that they were going to fall, but they knew how to fall well, then they were able to, they weren't so afraid of falling and they weren't all stiff doing the drills. They relaxed into it. They're like, okay, so we're going to fall. We get up. Yeah. I know I'm going to fall. I'm not going to hurt myself. Let's have fun.
What comes to my mind is almost like the unlearning. You have an expectation that I'm going to be the pro in skiing or snowboarding. But no, first we need to learn how to fall. You need to change your mindset.
Yeah. And that's, it all kind of comes down to that. And I just got off a call with a client and we talked about kind of shifting the mindset because they're moving from a subject matter expert to a leadership position. And their manager said, do less. You got to get yourself out of the weeds. And that's such a common problem is like executives moving into leadership positions really get stuck in the weeds because doing that work is what got them to where they are. Yeah. They enjoy it and then they are really good at it and they're holding on to it. Now they have to let that go because that's not required of them in this next phase. That's such a hard transition for them. And I said, okay, so what did you expect of yourself in this SME role? What was your job? And he's, well, I had to make sure that I put out this really good product. And I said, okay, what's your product now that you're a leader? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, it's team development. And I said, okay, so there's your product. And it's just shifting like little micro shifts like that. You're still producing a product. It's a different type of product now, but it's a product. It's some kind of output. So just kind of like really being really clear on like what you need to do, what that shift is, and like stating it out loud and how can you shift your mindset. You're still focused on the same thing, but in a different way.
I sometimes get that too. And my example that I use is always like, you were a firefighter, but now as the leader, you're the chief of the firefighter. As a firefighter, you have a very defined role. Now you need to think differently. And I've seen like a few people, like they get it when they have like a picture of how it should look like.
Absolutely. It's always fun to kind of see that moment too, right? Where you're just like that click and you can almost like see that light bulb go off and people say, yes. And then there's just like silence because everything just kind of starts clicking in their head. And then that's the moment that I really live for with my coaching is for my clients to kind of reach that light bulb moment, because then after that, everything shifts. And then the real work kind of happens after that. Once that light bulb goes off or once that shift happens, then the real work can really begin.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. And that's the fun part of coaching, right? So at the beginning, it's the hard work, the heavy lifting. Hey, don't you see it? You're not the firefighter anymore. Let's get to that next level. And thinking of next, where do you see coaching going? Where do you see yourself going?
It will involve coaching. that I will never walk away from. But as far as coaching in 2022, I think, at least from my experience, and perhaps I am working with a few different organizations, but I see more of a hybrid coach where the coach is actually wearing more hats. People are looking for a little bit more than just someone asking them questions, and it's moving more toward a partnership, where you're kind of giving advice at some point or a concept or an idea, and you're kind of dropping the topic in that the client brings to the session. But it's more of a conversation in certain ways, kind of like one of my colleagues called it coach salting. So it's kind of a bit more like an integration and a give and take. I think coaches need to be a little bit more versatile. And like for me, I'm struggling with that because the way I was trained at Columbia, like it's a coach and you have to be very clear which hat you're wearing. But it was always kind of an internal struggle for me when a client would say, oh, well, I need your advice on what to do here. And sometimes I would have the information or have really good resources for them or have an answer. But as a coach, am I supposed to give that answer? And so that was like always a struggle for me. But I've been seeing a lot more of that right at the beginning of the conversations. Some clients are like, I just need your advice on this. How do I do that? I at first always try to enable them and ask them questions and really try to elicit the answer from them. But sometimes you have to be more of a contributor.
I agree with you. What comes to my mind is also that you might give them some I call it planting some seeds, but then you can plant together. You say, what about this avenue? What about this? And they're like, I never thought about this. I feel everybody is a little different. I remember I had a client and they came prepared and they had a list and they had questions. And I was like, okay, good. If this is how you want to work with me, happy to do that. Then I have others and I ask all the questions. What about 1, 2, 3, 4? Let's go back. What have you done? What have you achieved? Where else can we go? I think everybody's a little different. It's just adapting to whatever style the person needs. I mean, if you go, I always think of like, if you want to buy a pair of running shoes, you need to buy the right running shoes that fit you, not anybody else. Same with the skiing. Some people are taller, some people are shorter. You don't buy the same skis for everybody.
And what kind of terrain are you riding into? Are you like out in backcountry, or you just running on a groomed corduroy? You're going to need different equipment.
I think that outer influences also come into play. Some people, when you coach somebody in Asia, it's a little different than somebody in Europe or in the US. So I feel like as a coach, you have to be very versatile and adaptable.
Absolutely. Yep. That's one of my values. Just being adaptable. You have and it's always because everyone's needs are changing moment to moment. You have to be adapted to all the different cultures. And I find such enjoyment in that because I also learn from that too. It makes me a better coach. The more variety of people that I get to work with, I understand cultures better, different parts of the world better, different. And then culture also within organizations. There's different cultures within different teams and different levels of the organization or different industries. So learning about that is great. And as one of the things I love about coaching is the exposure to so many different industries and so many different types of businesses. And it's great to have that exposure to so many different things that I don't think I would get the opportunity to in many other professions. And it also, I think, gives us coaches a very unique perspective on things because we get to pick up on patterns that we're hearing in topics or challenges from, across the globe, from all different industries and different types of people and everything. And it's funny to think that we're all so different, but a lot of the things that people bring to these sessions are very similar.
That's what we see all the time as coaches. Hallelujah. Don't you see? It's about communication. It's about reaching out to others. It's about being mindful. What I think is mostly overseen is being mindful with the self.
You have to know yourself before you can really begin to understand others. Again, knowing what your values are, knowing that your triggers are probably coming from a value being violated in some way and understand. So what's important to me in this conversation? Why am I being triggered? And then how can you understand and regulate yourself? You're able to be effective in that conversation still and not let that crocodile brain sort of take over. You can still be effective and be a good leader and have good EQ. But it all starts with that self-awareness and the self-management, and then knowing other people and adapting to them and increasing your versatility. But if you don't know yourself, if that self-awareness isn't there, the other parts are just not going to happen.
And I love your name. It's Holly Wright. Listen to Coach. She's always right.
It's kind of like my coaching company name, Wright Path Coaching. On the right path.
On the right path. I think you are on the right path. Thank you so much for all your great insights. All the best to a successful, fruitful, mindful 2022 with great people who want to transform. That I think that's our expectation that we have for our clients, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to 2022 and just applying all of our learnings from the last 2 years and hopefully making it a more powerful year for everyone.
Always nice to talk to a fellow coach. We can always learn from each other. Everybody has a different style. It's not one size fits all. Everybody is a little different. Every coach has to be also a little different. Take it from the Iron Woman. We have episodes every Monday, every Wednesday. Don't miss out. There's something for everybody. And download or buy the book, Take It from the Iron Woman, Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels.